Hi, folks, and welcome back to the Paradox Mega Campaign, to the very first episode of the penultimate, stepping stone towards final victory, or destruction. Either way, Victoria 2, Heart of Darkness. As the end of the medieval Age of Discovery, even the Age of Revolutions, is replaced by the Age of Industrialization and the scramble for Africa, because we sort of neglected it, not without reason, because that is one of the main focuses of Victoria 2. A few points to take into account as we transition. Because the focus of the game is very much different, and rightfully so, because colonization and discovery are no longer our main focuses. We have discovered the world. We know the entirety of the geography. Well, control most of the most of the geography, to be fair, so we know it well, because it is stained with the blood of the people we killed there. Genocidal maniacs that we are. Our megalomania continues from 1835 onward. We have some of our well-known rivals here. A few points regarding the transition. Deccan, for whatever reason, and I have fiddled with these files for as long as I can remember now. For the life of me, I cannot have Deccan properly show as what used to be Kalyani. It should be Deccan as the identifier for the country. It shows up as DEC. So, DEC it is. We can see here that in Victoria 2, there are specific metrics through which great powers are measured that differ from those in Europa Universalis 4. Whereas you had diplomatic ratings and development ratings, here we have prestige that is obtained through cultural achievements and influence over other nations. Military, which to a degree is similar in that the more units, the more ships you have, the higher the rating will be. But most importantly, and frankly the most important mechanic in the game, economics. Industrial economics for the greater part of the game. At the beginning, you don't really have any factories. That's the whole point. Guiding your nation through industrial revolution. To that end, however, development that is directly tied to each province is no longer how things are measured. We are now dealing with demographics. And to a degree, sociology, because we are going to be managing population classes. Oh, yes. Communism, National Socialism, actual socialism, National Socialism, the propaganda, far-right twisting of that political movement into something entirely new and very much different than actual socialism. Not to say that either is particularly feasible, knowing human nature as it is. However, these are things we're going to be dealing with for the next century. Well, almost the next century. We have a stable geopolitical situation, as in we, at the beginning of the game, are already the preeminent world power. Having territories in different parts of the world will also be very important to industrial development because of access to strategic goods. And our position will allow us to have access to pretty much every good type if we can hold on to our territory, or who knows, even expand it. That is another objective. We are a great power. We are an absolute monarchy. That is important, and we'll just about see why. So, as the game says, the end of Europa Universalis 4. Maestro, you have guided your nation through the early modern period. What, in historical terms, was the New World Revolutions that have not occurred, but we're going to go through our satellite states and allies in just a second. The Napoleonic Wars, of course, but moving into a new era. Perhaps involved in a mega campaign, yes. Will you manage to play until the winds of a World War in 1936? Will you still keep your position of prestige? There could be problems playing Victoria too earlier than 1820. Yes, we know. We created an interim period to transition smoothly between the two. And for good reason, because, again, we're going to see just how that affects development in economic terms, having well-tailored sociological strata, able and capable of doing just that. So our satellites, we have colonies. We have colonies, however, that are powerful enough that they can no longer be considered to be satellite states. And I'm going to go through these bad boys. Nova Scotia, or O Canada. USA. Ally, not a satellite state. Yucatan, or Mexico. Ally, not a satellite state. Brazil is a satellite. Buenos Aires or Argentina is a satellite. Peru, the same. The Caribbean, Venezuela, or Colombia as it were. California, Louisiana, Colombia. And this side of the planet, Australia, also a satellite. Then, of course, we have all of our territories in Southeast Asia, in Africa. These will be crucial because, as you can see, what we had along the coastlines, that were for the most part loosely considered as feitourias or commercial outposts more than actual territorial governance, because we really only had holdings in the coastline for the most part, with the exception of South Africa. During the 19th century, however, the scramble for Africa was an actual real thing. Historically, Portugal wanted to connect the colonies in Angola to Mozambique and have a transcontinental railway, east to west. The British, of course, had holdings from Egypt southward and South Africa northward, and they wanted to connect the African continent north to south with a railway. And if you know any history, you know how that turned out. Who came out ahead? Well, ahead, in terms of oppressing most people more effectively. Yeah, the British were pretty good at that. Even during some setbacks and during the Zulu Wars and etc. But this time around, things are going to be different. Because there are no British. However, there are still a few colonial rivals that could rear their head. Having holdings in Africa to begin with will make things a lot easier. So, let's select Portugal and get into the meat grinder. We're going to go take a look at every single aspect of the game before we start. If you don't play Victoria 2 very often, I'm no expert really. I've only played it a few times, never actually getting to the very end of the timeline, but I have a fairly solid grasp on the basics. And it's always more fun to not really know what you're doing, isn't it? Discover things as you go. So, as you can see, we have a very similar layout, but the focus is not quite on the same aspects. We have crises. We'll get into that at some point, I'm sure. Civilization levels, because different countries can be considered less or more civilized depending on their level of development in sociological and industrial economic terms. Kind of what would be the westernization status in EU4, but a bit finer than that. As you can see, Cheng and Deccan are no longer preeminent powers in that regard by the new measurements in terms of industrialized capacity, because, as you can see, though they have great military power, for example, Deccan, or Cheng even more so, and they are prestigious due to their cultural and civilizational influence over Southeast Asia, in terms of industrial potential, not quite up to scratch, are they? So that's something to keep in mind for Victoria 2. Industry. Industrial productive power is king. Because if you can put out significant numbers of advanced weaponry and overwhelming economic power, there's not really much your opposition can do to get to you. Though, of course, you have to back that up with military strength. So, beginning with just that. In the military tab, we can see that we have fielded 392 out of 1,225 possible brigades. But note a specific point that our soldiers can support. It is no longer a flat rating depending on your country that your soldiers can support. What does that mean? Well, a country has actual people that live in it, and people that are trained in the military sense, they've got basic training. They are, well, maybe not professional soldiers per se if they're not fielded, but able to be fielded. That is counted in these soldier-able pops. Same goes for officers, but specifically, we also have a rating for mobilization. In times of war, well, you can do that not in times of war, but why would you? You can also mobilize, scraping the barrel, people not necessarily trained to be soldiers, but, just from the wrecks of society. Not a happy thought. But you could have quite a few extra units, 392. We also have a naval capacity measured in port throughput, essentially. We're going to have to very quickly revise that. We have way too many ships from our trade protection fleets, and man-o'-wars are terrible ships in, terrible. Not resource effective in Victoria 2. We'll go through that in a bit. And officers. Officers provide leadership, and you want to have at least, as the tooltip says, at least 0.2% of your population trained officers. That, of course, is also improved by the fact that if your population is literate, and so on. If we go into the military tab, we can have a breakdown of generals, admirals, land units, and sea units. We can, of course, build armies. These, unlike in EU4, are directly tied to territories. This means that you should, ideally, privilege territories that have big populations to recruit units from, because units, if they lose men, will need to replenish them from where they were recruited. So if you recruit units from sparsely populated areas, they might not be able to replenish to full strength. Something else to keep in mind. We can also see that the units have different stats, and of course these are very important to battle composition. That is quite similar to Europa Universalis. Front line, back line, you want infantry In the front line, you want cavalry, specifically for the reconnaissance bonus you see there, that infantry does not have. I usually just keep the 1 for the bonus per army. That seems to be enough. And then an artillery back line. That'll be our basic composition to begin with. And irregulars are not good. Not good at all. Ships. Ships, we've got quite a few different types. To begin with, we can only build clipper transports, transport things, frigates, and man-of-wars. Man-of-wars are much slower, as you can see, and the attack and hull do not really make up for it, because they take up a lot more in terms of resources to build and maintain. And you can have several frigates for the cost of 1 man-of-war that output a lot more combat power. Notice the evasion? No such thing in a man-of-war. Yeah. So we're gonna scrap all of our man-of-war and just keep frigates. As many as we need. But the most important thing, really, to begin with at least, is transports, so we can move our troops around easily if and when we need to. We will not have great rivalry at sea to, I don't know, for a long time, because the economics of naval warfare are a bit different than Victoria II, and most nations are not able to maintain very large fleets of these new types of ships. We can imagine these were starting to be converted to modern versions of clippers. We only had old transports. Clippers are pretty fast. I think actually the sail-powered speed record over 24 hours is a clipper ship. That I hope I'm not making this up, but had an average speed of, I want to say, over 20 knots, which is incredible. Anyway, clipper ships, very impressive for the limitations of the time, of course. Backbone of the economic world order. And of course, well, you can select your generals based on their personality as well. We'll take a look at that if and when we must. That is the military breakdown. We're going to go through our military units in a bit and disband most of these ship fleets. So, moving on to diplomacy. Also very different to U4, diplomacy is now managed into spheres of influence. Any nation under your sphere of influence will allow you to have access to their resource base. And vice versa. So you will also be selling goods into their territories in reciprocity. This is very important as a major for 2 reasons. Building industry means you will need to have access to the goods necessary to feed into that industry. You could potentially create trade wars or bottlenecks to starve opposition of critical goods. We're going to try to do that, in fact, with very important resource at the beginning, machine parts that are required to build up your industry. So if we can limit the amount of machine parts in the world market and hoard them for ourselves and build up our industry before anyone else has a chance of having a strong backbone, we might just be able to create a few, maybe not monopolies, but certainly very heavily skewed world markets in strategic goods in our favor. And that is the whole point of this. Grand strategy. You've got to love Victoria II. Another aspect to take into account is, of course, other great powers can sneak, influence, and move, well, not neutral necessarily, but not great powers into their sphere of influence. Of course, great powers cannot sphere other great powers. Great powers are defined by these scores we were taking a look at. Prestige, cultural development, industrial power, production and economics, military power. Currently, it's us, Germany, Poland, Tabriz, the USA, and Brazil, former colonies, still our allies, now also great powers. So we don't quite control them like we used to. Netherlands and Alexandria. That may change. And now that I'm looking at this, we do want to avoid war with Germany just now, because we're not at our strongest. We are very cash poor. And war is very expensive in Victoria too. I'll feel comfortable going to war once we have a few million pounds under our belt. We're at 43,000 and our budget is not looking good, is it? I'll get into that in just a bit. So over here we can see opinions, relations, different things, their ratings, and of course the influence each great power has over them. Crucial, because once the influence gets high enough, they can sphere the country. So for instance, if we wanted to, you can't always do that, so you need to have your influence increase through a different metrics, relationship, differential and power, and so on. Have your influence grow over a country, so you can then increase your opinion and eventually add to the sphere. That's how these mechanics work. Quite complicated sometimes. You sort of need to game theory what and who is going to try to sphere for what resources and what purpose, in what order as well. In a typical game, that is crucial because we control so many different territories and all different strategic resources to a degree already. And we have many countries in our sphere, our colonies. We may have a few that we can sphere. Oh yeah, for instance, you have the warnings here that, keep an eye on those by the way. We can already sphere Nova Scotia, so if we click on that specifically, it'll go... Oh, it doesn't go automatically to the... okay, well, we'll have to go to Nova Scotia manually. Let's put them by alphabetical order. Nova Scotia, we can add to sphere. They were not already in our sphere. Okay, so you can see we have 100 influence in them. We can, of course, add, increase or decrease influence through this priority meter. And yeah, let's add Nova Scotia to our sphere because we want their goods to be available to us. The United States has been trying to influence Nova Scotia. Interesting. Yeah, we want to keep high influence on Nova Scotia. So who do we have high influence with, apart from our own sphere? California Republic. Yeah, let's have middle. To those that... actually, you need to be high, because the United States is also trying to influence you to some degree. Okay, yeah, let's keep it that way. Let's see, opportunities to grow our influence. Maybe Japan we can take a swing at. I also noticed that Cheng is not a great power, so... we may want to, yeah, just dip our toe in that. Alright, quick oversight. Ongoing wars. Quite a few. If we want to intervene, because we are a great power, we may want to join on either side, depending on how it's going, and if it's in our advantage, of course. War justifications. Boy, these are different. Do this to the wrong country, especially miners, and get found out or fail, and that is a horrible increase to infamy that takes an incredibly long time to reduce. Use it sparingly. And, importantly, cleverly. We want to use our influence, however, so we have influence points here. You see, diplomatic points. That grow, I think, based on if you're a great power, of course, but also, I'm not sure if you're ranking or your literacy. Maybe I'm just making this up. They go up slowly, so make good use of the points you get. And Germany hates us. We want to avoid a war, because they are a great military power. You can see here they have 226 army groups, and we have maybe 500 or 600, but they're spread around the planet, 700. Okay. So we have an advantage, but not much more than parity in Europe, in the European theater. And as I said, we're cash poor, so if we can avoid a war for a while, until we're good and ready to destroy them, we will. So each of these actions takes a given amount of points. For increasing relations, it's 2 points. You can do that once per month. Well, if you have the points. We will not have enough points to do that once per month to Germany, given that we have very low accumulated total there. So, diplomacy. Trade. This is the actual, well, trade and production. The meat on the bones for the game mechanics. You will be looking at this very often to see what you need to maintain your units, produce factories, whatever you're doing currently, what your population needs to feed itself and, fulfill its basic luxury and other needs. We'll see how that works in a bit. And, if you're not producing them, how much you're paying for those goods in the world market, and how much factories need to produce for our production lines to keep going. This is what's being bought and sold, what we have stockpiled. We can set stockpiles for each and every good type. So we can corner markets, for instance. That's one thing you can try to do. Sort of hoard, hike up the prices, and then flood the market, make a killing. Sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. I don't like to fiddle that with it too much. And common market, meaning everything we have internally within our territory and other countries within our sphere of influence. Very important. Because if you're a small, poor country, but you manage to, say, include rubber-producing territories in Asia, coffee-producing territories in America, into your sphere of influence, these will come into your common market, even though they're not strictly part of your directly controlled territory. Interesting mechanic. So to begin with, we were going to be looking at the basic materials: cotton, dyes, wool, silk, things needed for basic production lines, industrial goods, most importantly steel, cement, machine parts, oh yes, fertilizer to produce explosives, of course, and weapons of war, consumer goods, things the people need to survive, foodstuffs, but also luxury goods like coffee and tobacco, liquor. And then, of course, the basic requirements for war. Don't lean too heavily on having a lot of factories producing military goods, though, because unless you are at war, and nobody else is at war, who are you going to sell them to? And the answer is nobody. So you'll be stockpiling these in great quantities if you're overproducing them, and then selling them for pennies on the pound if and when you can offload them. Have enough for your supplies and a bit extra. Don't go overboard on these. Their price and value fluctuates greatly depending on how much fighting there is. So how much demand there is for military material. So, you can leave these to be traded automatically, bought and sold. You can set maximum stockpiles to be held by your nation. To begin with, we are going to remove the automation from that, so you can see the AI ticker. We remove that from machine parts. And we are going to set a stockpile. I think the factory is going to need, yeah. Typically the largest factories require maybe 300 or so, I think. Whatever. We want to keep a tidy little stockpile just in case we can get our hands on some earlier than expected. And we don't want to be selling them, most importantly, to nations that do not have access to them in the beginning, because these are crucial to building factories, and having a leg up in building factories early on, quite important. Population. Now here we go. These are the number of adult men, I think, able to serve, not the total population. If we go to the... where can we see the total population? I forgot. Somewhere. This should correspond to about 200 million people overall, I believe. Somewhere where you should be seeing that. You can see the population. But is that's not the total population, right? It's the military age population, I think. Oh well. Try to figure that out. I'm pretty sure I'm not making that up. In any case, you can see that population is set according to territories. So each province has territories in them. Each of these has a demographic composition. Each and every one. And they're all different. Demographic composition made up of these classes of people. Soldiers, we have 3.5 million. And people are stopping being soldiers, meaning that there's something wrong. Maybe they're not being paid well enough. We'll have to see it, what that is. Slaves. Not good because they don't pay taxes. Well, apart from the whole we're not free thing. But most importantly, they're not paying us taxes. That's freeloading. Not good. We want tax-paying citizens. So we want to abolish slavery when we can, because we're so kind, and not at all because we're money-grubbing bastards. Officers. As we saw, very important to keep a good officer count. Again, some people are moving from officer class to something else, so that's not necessarily good. Laborers. Basic laborers. Farmers, again, basic poor classes. Craftsmen, very important because they make things. They make things that are needed for industrial purposes. Clerks, super important because they work in factories. Clergymen, also super important because they teach people how to read and things. Other things being religious mumbo-jumbo, but reading is good. Capitalists, they can finance projects. So we want their money, and financing projects that we decide are good. Anything else, they can go stuff it. Bureaucrats, very, very good. They collect our taxes. We need a lot of bureaucrats. Rubber stamping and filing tax returns left and right. Artisans, the people that make things not in factories. That is essentially everyone else that has a a trade of sorts, a skill, producing whatever it is. And aristocrats, people that own things for the most part. And so you can see the entire population breakdown here, or you can select a specific subsection of your country to see what's what. And as you can see, well, we have a lot of different people. And I just noticed Portuguese aren't even the majority culture. We're going to teach people how to read Portuguese, so that may change in time. Also important, their ideology and how they vote. We want to keep a degree of control, so we'll take a look at that just next. Also very important. Life needs, everyday needs, and luxury needs. People need to be getting these. If they're not, that's a problem. They are not going to be happy. Everyday needs, it's nice to have, but if you don't fulfill every single one of these, they'll be alright. Luxury goods, I mean, rich people need to have most of these. Everyone else, whatever they can get is fine, really. Ideally, you can aim to have everything provided to everyone. Not quite within our grasp right now. Consciousness, that is people's awareness of sort of their political role in society, as in how likely they are to participate in political movements or revolts. And militancy is the actual transition of, hey, maybe this should be done, to I'm picking up this pitchfork and doing it. And literacy. This is affected by how many clergymen we have teaching people how to read across the planet. We want this to be at least 70-80% overall, so that we have a well-trained and capable, productive force. You can see many places very low literacy. In politics, oh yeah, we're gonna be doing some fiddling around in here. Most importantly, state capitalism. Oh yeah, we command... Sorry about that, slight hiccup. We command the heights of the economy, but limited free enterprise, so that our capitalists can pay for a railroad, for instance, but we want to decide what factories we build and where, because capitalists are idiots. They're going to be building stupidly ill-conceived industrial plans that will become very expensive for us if we don't nip that in the bud. Movements, well, people that may want to revolt at some point. We'll need to keep an eye on that. Decisions, I'll take a look at this next episode. These are interesting. And then, of course, of all the territories we hold, if we wanted to release nations, but why would we do that? That is anathema to world conquest. No, 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 no. No, no. We should have an annex button here, not release a nation. And then, important issues. Things that people believe in. Thankfully, not many people believe in much of anything currently. Not bad. We can, of course, enact these decisions. We'll take a look at in a bit. Oh yes, quite important. Focus points. We can have national focus points. This is something we will implement in the next episode once we start doing things. Having just two to begin with, we can live with, because we all have very limited industrial hubs. We'll take a look at that to a greater degree along the way, of course. Technology. Literacy is very important for technological advancement. So your population composition, as you can see, having more clerks and clergymen helps. We have, well below requirements here. We'll be taking a look at these fine technological advancements that we're going to be going through as quickly and efficiently as we can at a later point. The budget. Oh yeah. We want to make money. We want to have enough money to declare war. We have no money here. We are spending way too much money here, as you can see. Not even 2,000 coming in, more than 10,000 going out. What are these people doing? Terrible mismanagement. We'll be fiddling with this very shortly. But as you can see, military spending affects how many officers and soldiers are getting paid to their full needs. If people are getting pensions and unemployment subsidies and whatnot, we currently have no such benefits, because in politics, you know, people are working as long as they need to be, and that is all the time, every day, all the time, every day, and so on. But at some point, they may have some actual social net. Administration, bureaucrats, education, clergymen. Things we need for soldiery and ships to go boom boom. And of course, how much we're taxing. The rich, aristocrats and capitalists, the aristo pigs and capitolo pigs. The middle class, officers, clerks, clergymen, artisans, and then the poor, the backbone of society. We, of course, are going to tax the high heaven every single penny we can from everyone. We have a national bank that we can borrow from. A stockpile of money, of course, that we want to be huge. Loans taken, if you're going to debt, we're gonna go pay interest, and that is not good. Loans given, if you have a lot of extra cash, you can loan it out and get interest. Now that is good, and we would not mind that. And of course, if you have unprofitable factories, you can subsidize them. That can be good if there's strategic productive capacity, and say, like I was saying, if you're producing military goods, even if it's peacetime and they're not actually being able to sell what they're producing to break even, and have a profit. Break even. What a turn of phrase. And turn a profit, they could potentially go bankrupt. You don't want that. You want to keep your military industrial complex humming along even when it's peacetime, so that you can go boom boom when it's wartime. So you may want to subsidize, at the very least, those. But really, we're going to be subsidizing everything that is basic, and we need at least one of to keep everyone happy in our country. We want to make sure those, even when economic downturns occur, and they will at some point, possibly, we want to make sure that we keep our industrial base, at least the vital parts of it, safe and sound in all circumstances. Even have to pay out of the nose for it. Can become very expensive if things are seriously mismanaged, but we'll be able to keep a lid on that, I think. So, as far as the economic basics go, we'll go further into this once we start fiddling with the sliders. And then, production. As we can see, we have a notice about a lot of unemployed people. These are people that are, well, could have a work in a factory, but don't. So we may want to build factories where there's able people that are unemployed. That may just be an idea. Just putting it out there. Able people put to productive use. Yeah. So, here is where we manage factories. If you don't have the right political setup, though, as in economic policy, you may not have this. If you look at the tooltip, build factories, yes, you need that. If you don't have that, capitalists decide what gets built and where exclusively. That is not good. They build cloth factories and iron ore producing territories with no craftsmen and no railroad right on the border of a very aggressive enemy, and they'll do very stupid things. So you don't want that. Here you can see, per territory, all your factories. To begin with, we don't have many. Though as a great power, we have more than most. We are producing, glass, luxury clothes, really? Huh, and they're turning a tidy profit already. We may have the only luxury clothes factory on the planet. We have canned food, good for the military. Fabrics, more canned food. Cement, more fabric. Oh, that's a lot of fabric. Ammunition, okay, more glass. More fabric, okay, we have a lot of fabric. Paper, people need paper to be able to learn how to read. Basic needs, yeah, so we're missing quite a few of the basics. We'll have to take a look at that. Foreign investments, of course. Other countries can invest in our industry. Production, very important. We could take a look at this. We can see exactly how much. Wow, we're producing 80% of the world stock. Yeah, our ammunition productive capacity appears to be well ahead of anyone else. Okay, well. So you can see who produces it, who uses it, and what it is used for ultimately. You can see that for every single one of these goods. We may go through that at some point. Not going to go through that exhaustively right now. Things that are grayed out, or browned out, we have not discovered yet. Of course, we cannot make tanks in 1835, nor airplanes. We can't make use of rubber, oil. We have not yet discovered technology, you know, a need for machine parts and so on. Many things we need to move into technologically. And then projects are things that, okay, fertilizer factory, I don't want. Can they actually, hold on. State capitalism. They can also open factories. We can't have complete control over and monarchy party control. Only state capitalism. Okay, so they will be building factories. We may have to destroy a few and waste those resources if they go unprofitable. Okay, so they can, under these conditions, build factories. A fertilizer factory in Extremadura. Fertilizer factory in Extremadura. There is no... If we go to RGO output, fertilizer factory would be good to set up in a sulfur-producing province because they use of sulfur. That is not efficient. These should be canned food product or wine because there's fruit here. Port wine, of course. Yeah. That is not a good placement for a factory. See what I mean? Stupid idiots. Anywho, we will be looking at building some factories. We will need machine parts for that. And we don't have the tech, so we need the tech. We're going to research that. And finally, the main screen here. Our prestige and our rank in each of these subsections. We're number 1 at everything. Of course we are. And colonial power. This is what will allow us, or not, with another colonial map. With another limitation is our technological advancement to colonize different territories. Different life ratings means natural hazards, as in disease-ridden territories, susceptibility to malaria and such, or just aggressive natives. The lower the life rating, the easier to colonize, I think, right? Or is it the other way around? I forgot. Anyway, technology helps to colonize. And regions that have this allow you to send an expedition at the cost of colonial power. So if you have none, you can't colonize. If you don't have territories close by, it's more difficult. You can see that we have plenty of areas we can already expand into, and that's good. We're going to do that. We're going to do that. So, I was going to say a short intro, but wow, it's an entire video's worth. Into what matters and what we're going to be looking at more closely during our time with Victoria 2. And, oh yeah, that's not an accent, that's a lake. Lake Balaton. I was about to say that Portugal does not have an accent on the U. No, it's a lake. Yeah, so, next time around, we're going to be setting all of this up to our liking and see if our budget is balanced. Keeping a big fleet, not likely. So we may have to cut deeper and closer to the bone that we might like at the beginning. That, however, is going to be next time. Until then.